Let's revisit our Section 5, Stressing the Unusual Assignments. Now this one is the first one. It's on page 152. And this one is long, right? But it's actually not as long when you write it out, I think, as it looks here. It flips over to the next page, so don't forget about that part. You know, you don't want to miss the second part of the story. And so, but let's go ahead and look at the story. Let's look at what happened here. So take a pause in your video and read your fact set. Don't forget to go to the next page and catch the very end of that fact set. Now, let's look at what happened here. So you want to ask yourself what happened. There is an unusual element in the story, and you need to figure out how you're going to put that in the lead. So you need to think about it. Sometimes you can start with the unusual element. Maybe that helps, but you've got some who's here. So let's look at our who's. Our who's are 3 elderly people who lived in the downtown area. Now let's go ahead, they're from your hometown. So they lived in downtown Podunk or wherever you want them to live, but we need to give them a hometown. We're going to have to delay ID all of these people. Again, that's a question that you ask yourself. I'm not always going to tell you to do that. That's something that you need to know by this time. You know, what happened? And what happened is they died, right? And it looks like they died in this heat wave. This describes the heat wave, 100 degrees plus temperatures for the past week, and humidity levels between 75 and 90% each day. So if you live in South Louisiana, you know what's going on there, right? It's so bad that the authorities are cautioning people, especially the young and elderly, they're the most vulnerable in a situation like this, to stay inside air conditioning and don't work too hard outside in the sun, right? Now, how did we find this out? So our Podunk Health Department officials held a press conference this morning to announce the deaths. That is going to be the least important piece of information. Don't start with that. And that's really not, start with what happened, right? 3 elderly downtown residents, right, died in this heat wave. If you have space, you can use one of these descriptors that we have at the top that tells us what happened. Now, we don't know the time frame. It was in the past 2 days, which you can say, if you want to, you can say this week or the past 2 days, because we don't really know. Maybe that would be a question that we'd ask. Sometimes there's a few more people who have to work on the case to tell us exactly when that happened. But that's good enough for your audience. So we have 3 elderly. Now, you know, you want to be careful with that word, right? I think by the time, so Jeffrey is 84, Teresa's 79, Betsy's 86. By the time you get to your late 70s and 80s, that works. You know, I don't know how old you are, but you know, your grandparents could be, you know, in their 60s, and they might be hang gliding as we speak. So I don't know if they would think that they're elderly. So that's, again, a word you want to be careful with. And whoever you work for would probably have some guidance there for you too. So we're going to use their names, their ages, and their addresses. Now, there's really no rule for apartment in your AP style book, so I'll let you do what you want here. Sometimes you might leave that out, but let's do it anyway because it helps us to practice writing that. And then we have Jeffrey and his wife, Teresa. So let's use their ages. The way this is written is really a good way to put this in your story. And I think we should use first and last names for the husband and the wife. That gets us accustomed to double checking that information. Not all wives take their husband's last names. And so you want to make sure that you get that right. Remember, you need to fix any AP style errors that you see in the FactSet or the city directory. Let's put occupations if you know what they are, because that also helps us to get to know these people. They worked within a community. People knew them and loved them, and so this helps us to be able to tell the story a little bit better because people are looking for the name. So we're going to delay ID them, and the second paragraph, remember, we've got to tell people who they are. We can't wait. What I recommend here is that create 2 sentences to identify them. Because you have 3 people, you have all those ages, all those addresses, trying to put that in 1 sentence is going to be a problem. So when you have that happen, think about how you can divide the information. And the most logical way would be to put Betsy Aaron in 1 sentence. We can say, family members found her or something like that. 1 victim was identified. We don't need to say that. That's police lingo. Let's just tell people what happened. And then also the second sentence now can be Jeffrey and his wife Teresa, and any information that you have about all of those. Now remember, you get 4 type lines, so you can add some more information about the situation. But there's an unusual element here that needs to go in your lead. Figure out what it is and put it in the lead. So think about, let's jump back to the lead for just a minute, because you have some who's now. You've got your main who's are going to be the people. So we need to know that 3 people died. Generally where they lived was downtown. So that can go in the lead too. We need to know what killed them, and we need to know maybe anything else that you can put, and that unusual element needs to go in the lead too. So you think about who your who's are here. Your most obvious are the people. Family members, right? Found them. Sometimes the most easy who to start with would be what caused this thing in the first place, right? So the heat wave killed these people. And that's another who. The unusual element, in this case, maybe you can start with that. Try some different ways to start. It's going to let you put more information, and it flows more smoothly, honestly, when you kind of experiment with who to start with in the story. Sometimes different who's allow you to say more. So sometimes the most obvious, again, are the people, but you can kind of move around and see what you think about starting with another who there. Now, this is a great inverted pyramid story, most important to least important. If this heat wave has happened for a while, then chances are, unless you never left your house, you know it's bad, right? You've lived in it, you've seen it on the news, you've read about it. So some of the details about the heat wave we can put later on in the story, right? They've been cautioning people, so this is not new. And so think about all of that. Your story is about these people and the circumstances around them. And so this is passive voice. There's a lot of passive voice in here, and I want you to think about it. Police and health department officials were alerted to the deaths, in each case by relatives. Start with the who. Relatives alerted police, right? So that's going to be a better way to say it, a lot more clean and crisp, and your audience can follow that along too, right? Now let's go down here again. Fans and air conditioners were delivered by city workers. Passive voice again. Fix that. To help them to cope with the heat wave. And then when you flip the page, you find out that they hadn't been installed in these people's houses, right? Very important detail. We don't know who's responsible for installing those. You can't blame the city. You can't blame anybody. You just tell people what you know, that they were not installed. They were still in their boxes, basically, which to me tells me that, just that statement right there, I don't even have to say that they weren't installed, because you can't install if it's still in its box, right? That's the clearest way to say it. Usually if city provides an appliance like that, it's up to the resident to install it, but we don't know any of that. That would be a question that we could ask. But at this point, all we do is say what happened. Don't blame anybody. Don't put it on anybody. It could be that they delivered them and the people didn't want to have them, right? So there's all kinds of reasons that things happen that are not, we might not even think about. We have to be careful that we don't. The only thing to blame in any of this is the heat wave, right? Other than that, we just tell everybody what happened. So the story's long. The fact set's longer than we have been accustomed to in some cases, but honestly, it's going to be easy for you to write if you follow the guidelines that we talked about in our brainstorming session. So let me know if you have a problem. What I recommend when you start to write a story is you find a place, you park yourself there, and you don't get up until you're finished. Don't let yourself get sidetracked. Don't let yourself procrastinate. Don't clean your closet. Don't do anything. Read this, get started, do the story, and you'll do much better because you are focused on what you have to do. Pick your phone up and focus on the story. Let me know if you need anything.